Back up. I do not know what is going on. Okay, we all know the deal. All right, so after the Passover, he's arrested, and from the arresting, he's put on trial in front of the Sanhedrin. We've learned how those court proceedings go with the Sanhedrin, and he's turned over to Pilate, and then Pilate condemns him to be crucified, and then he is crucified. The crucifixion of Christ, just so we know, is the most attested to event. Antiquity is just kind of a fancy word of saying 2 millennium ago, 2,000 years ago. That's just a fact. It's the most. We have more evidence for the crucifixion of this carpenter's son in the middle of an outwater of the Roman Empire than any other event in human history from antiquity. We have over 15 different separate accounts of his crucifixion. 15. If you have one account of an event, that event is considered historic. If you have two events, or two separate attestations, two separate pieces of evidence attesting to the historical event, it's impeachment. 3, forget about it. 15. For the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is the most attested to event from antiquity. Then he was buried in an old tomb to confirm his. Did we talk about the shroud? I was in a conversation with a person a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about the shroud, and he said, "Well, that is so Catholic," and it is, because the Catholic Church is the one that does promote the shroud, and does promote it as a, they say, the relic, and entirely different discussion, but they do promote it as the actual burial cloth of Christ. And his argument essentially was is that to believe in the shroud, that the shroud is real, is to embrace Catholicism, Catholic dogma. So I was kind of surprised. Well, but I'm just saying that it just kind of caught me off guard to say, well, only Catholics believe that, and that's not true. I mean, a large percentage of Protestants are also the shroud is actually burial cloth of Christ. Okay. It is. I was supposed to go to a conference last summer, but then I took a job. Stupid. I know I had to cancel that. Yeah, I know I had to cancel it. I lost my money. They didn't even refund my money. Ooh. Okay. Then of course the resurrection, most important event in human history. Again, this is a well attested to event. Even outside the gospel, you have people attesting to the fact that the early Christians believed this based on eyewitness testimony. We have that. I have to start doing it that way. Then you have the ascension, 40 days after the crucifixion, and then you have Pentecost, which is 50 days after ascension, 10 days 50 days after the resurrection, 10 days after the ascension, and this is where the disciples received the ability to speak in tongues. It was a miracle attesting to the fact that the message was true. It's not working. There we go. Then we start with the miracles. The healing of the lame man at the gate. We talk about why there's miracles. Miracles were for what? To affirm the message being preached. Peter and John were arrested for doing this, but you have Mark. First martyr of the church, Philip in Samaria, with the Ethiopian. We have that story. Then we have the story of conversion of Paul on his road to Damascus, the chief persecutor of the people of the Christian faith, becomes a Christian himself. One of the highest could make that argument. I wouldn't, by definition, but anyway, you have Peter's vision in book of Acts, changing the dietary laws, and then you have the dispute over whether or not Gentiles should be coming into the church. Then you have Peter being delivered from prison. Paul and Barnabas' first missionary journey. Paul and Barnabas finishing their first missionary journey. The second, or then you have this Jerusalem Council, which decided, the Jerusalem Council, they made the decision that you did not have to meet the Mosaic law requirements in order to become a Christian. And this was mainly for the Gentiles. Gentiles were being told, they called them Judaizers. They called them Judaizers for having to require Gentiles to go through conversion to Judaism and then a conversion to Christianity. Well, how do you become a Jew if you're a Gentile? Well, there's diet, you have to get circumcised, hello, and you have to meet all kinds of other requirements in order to become a Jew. Well, they're saying no. Christ alone satisfied the law. Christ is a fulfillment of the law. You don't have to do these things. The law being the Mosaic law. And then you have the split between Paul and Barnabas, over the leadership of John Mark. And Barnabas, or Paul, goes with Silas, and then you have Timothy. Who else is on this screen? Timothy. Silas is the fourth one. Fourth one, that's very common. Luke. And then you had what? Paul comes to Athens. Now Paul has left Athens, and last week we have Paul in Corinth. Corinth is a city that is what we call a modern, quote, Roman city, embraces all of the immorality that the Romans were involved in at that time, and they followed the pantheon of Roman gods, but it was a very prosperous city. And I talk about the reason why is because it sits right next to an isthmus, a very narrow strip of land that was used for ships to be taken out of the water, transported across this narrow piece of land into the sea right below it, right just south of it. And it had all kinds of business going on. Very prosperous, very cosmopolitan. And here you have Paul in verse 3 saying, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed with them and worked. Now, who's he talking about? We're talking about Priscilla and Aquila, who were Jewish converts from Rome. They had been exiled from Rome by the emperor. All the Jews had been kicked out of Rome because of the disruption that they were causing. So they had fled to Corinth, which was in Greece. And so Paul joins them, and Paul by trade is a tent maker. We talked about this bivocational ministry example that Paul sets. And the reason why it was bivocational, they had bivocationalism, is because they did not want to be a burden to the people within the community. This is an early church. They do not have a large base of financial support for their leaders, for their teachers. So Paul, instead of relying on the church to provide the sole source of his financial support, he also works bivocationally. The second vocation is making tents and working with leather. It's basically leather working. At the time that he was working with leather. Let's see. Realize. Okay, so verse 4. These were the verses. We read these verses, correct? Yeah, we read these verses. These were the verses that supported the idea of bivocationalism. Now, does this mean that all pastors today should be bivocational? Yeah, right. You're exactly right. Most of them are. That's the girl that I was talking about last week. That Stewart County. they have to have some kind, and it isn't just paying them a salary to support themselves and their family, but in their old age, I mean, they have to have a retirement contribution because you have to have some type of income when you get old. Other than, I mean, Social Security just is not. Some people rely completely on their Social Security, and that's okay. So every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. Where have we seen this before? Paul, it says in verse 4, Paul, every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogues, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. We've seen this everywhere Paul goes. This is his method of operation. First place he goes is to the synagogue. He goes to the synagogue to tell them that, hey, look, um, this is your Old Testament. These are your scriptures. This is what your scriptures say about the Messiah and what the Messiah, who the Messiah will be, what the Messiah will do, and why he came to come. And this is what Jesus Christ did according to your scriptures. So therefore, Jesus is your Messiah. So every time that he went to a new city, he would go to the synagogue. He did not have to start at ground zero like he did in Athens. Did he go to the synagogue in Athens? He went to Mars Hill, where the philosophers, the Stoics, and the Epicureans were. The smartest people in the world at the time, supposedly. He goes there, and he doesn't start with, well, here are the Old Testament scriptures. Here's what God says in the book of Isaiah. No, because well, what's the book of Isaiah? Which God are you talking about? So he says, oh, I went to this unknown God, this God, this God that you have an altar to, the unknown God. Let me tell you about this unknown God. So that's where he starts with. Here, again, in Corinth, he goes to the synagogue and he tries reasoning with them. And this sets an example of dialoguing with people, talking to people, not shouting and screaming at them, reasoning with them, trying to persuade. Persuade is a good word. And he does this every Saturday, and this demonstrates his commitment to winning souls for Jesus Christ, to preaching the gospel message so people can understand how God in the Old Testament tells of his plan and what we find in the New Testament. Now, the New Testament, of course, didn't exist at this time because this is about 50 AD, and I'm going to get to that here momentarily. Stop. Stop. We have to do something else here. This is ridiculous. Okay, to give everything in follow Christ. And then, okay, this is a really good one right here. When you're a Jew and you leave the Jewish faith, what does your family do to you? What? Yes, they disown. Yeah, you are disowned. You are no longer considered. Who's here seen Fiddler on the Roof besides Betsy? Fiddler on the Roof, the movie. Fiddler on the Roof. Have you seen that movie? Fiddler. Okay, Fiddler on the Roof is a story about this old Jewish man in Russia. He has three daughters, and he goes to marry off his three daughters. One is going to be married off to an old man, and his daughter pleads with him to not make him or make her marry this old man. And she finally convinces him, okay, I'm not going to make you marry this old meat cutter or whatever he was. So he has this dream, or makes up this dream for his wife, so he convinces his wife that they can violate the Mosaic law and break the marriage vows or the betrothal or whatever. And then the second one, his daughter, instead of being told who she can marry, she falls in love with this guy who is a sower, and she decides that she wants to marry him. And he says, no, you have to, only I can tell you who can marry. Well, she finally convinces him that she can marry this guy. Well, the third daughter wants to marry a guy who's not a Jew. And what does he do to her? Do you remember what he does to her? But he completely disowns her. Why? Because she's leaving the Jewish faith. So when we talk about Jews who leave the Jewish faith, they leave everything. They leave their family. They leave any security that they had within their communities as far as employment may be concerned, or if they're a business owner, nobody is going to do business with them. Why? Because they're not Jews. So when he starts to say he's going to persuade people to become a Christian, Paul is basically saying to people, I want you to give up everything that you have known in your life to follow Christ. That's a big order. That's and the same. Why not? Because it says, because he had a lot of possessions and he did not want to give up his earthly life for his heavenly gain. Yeah. So, well, I just had something I was gonna. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Taking way too long. Here we go again. Okay, the pantheon of Roman gods. Okay, and again, if you worship the pantheon of Roman gods, and now you're just going to worship one God, what you're basically doing is leaving the faith of everybody around you to embrace a faith that, number one, is not legal in the Roman Empire. And what happens to people who follow faiths that are not legal in the Roman Empire? They are persecuted. It'd be the equivalent today of being a Muslim is a great example. If you are a Muslim and you leave the Islamic faith today, you are shunned. You are completely shunned by your family. Your family disowns you. You are shunned from your community. You are considered what they call an apostate. And the law, the Sharia, the Islamic law, says that they can kill you for being an apostate. There's all kinds of processes that you have to follow, and before you off them, but they can kill you without what they call indemnity. There's no indemnity for killing an apostate. What's that? Amish, yeah. Yeah. Well, if you, and that's the thing, if you can be killed for leaving your faith, you're probably in a cult. Well, they consider it a punishment. They don't do it anymore because they go to prison. Yeah, I know it is with the Amish because my father and mother-in-law are really good friends with an Amish family, and they have a decision. You have a decision at the age of, I think it's 18 or what, I don't remember what age it is. What? 16? Yeah. So you can either stay or go, and if you go, you're done. You're out the dough. Okay, let's get to verse 5. Verse 5. And when Silas and Timothy came from Macedonia, so Paul wanted Silas and Timothy to catch up with him, and they finally do. Paul was pressed in the Spirit and testified to the Jews that Jesus was the Christ. So here you have Paul finally saying, okay, Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Just as Jesus confesses in that synagogue in Nazareth, reading from the Isaiah scroll, today fulfillment of the scriptures, or these scriptures have been fulfilled before your eyes. And they're like, whoa, what are you saying, Jesus? He goes, I'm the Messiah. And they tried to kill him. Same thing here with Paul. Paul presses them, saying this is what the Old Testament says, this is what it says about the Messiah, this is who it would be, this is what he would do. Well, guess what? Here's this carpenter's son in Galilee. He meets all these requirements. He is the Christ. So, here you have Paul finally saying Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of the Old Testament scriptures. So he said that there's a variant here. Remember we talked about remember we were talking about variants? Okay. Some manuscripts say spirit, others say with the word. It really does not have a big change in the meaning, but it does, in a way, change things. Instead of being expressed through the spirit, it's expressed in the written word. So you have a variant on what he says here. And from here on out, Paul this is all he does, is he just preaches the gospel. This is sole purpose in life. And his core message, of course, is Jesus is the Messiah. Come on. Can we read Acts 17:15? Acts 17:15. Okay, so Paul and Silas, this is kind of a comical part of the New Testament. Paul and Silas, Paul is in Athens, and he's sending messages back to Macedonia, or what was the town that they were in? Thessalonica? Is that where they were? Okay, they were in Thessalonica. And he's sending messages back there to Silas and Timothy, saying, get down here, I need you down here in Athens. And they never show up. So Paul gets to Corinth, and this is basically saying that this is where they finally show up. Now he feels confident where now he has other people to assist him in his ministry to preach the gospel message, and they finally get there. And then you find different passages in Thessalonians of them encouraging Paul. If you want to take a moment and read through those. And then it also says that financial support is brought. When you look at the letter to the Corinthians, Paul is thanking them for the financial support that he has been receiving from the people in Thessalonica. Is that me, Joseph? No. Okay. Verse 6. But when they opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook out his clothes in protest and said to them, your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent from it. From now I will go to the Gentiles. So he is standing up and he's saying, look, Jews, you are going to reject the message that of Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of your scriptures. That's on you. It's just like Ezekiel. Can somebody turn to the book of Ezekiel? I'm going to get this wrong. Chapter 33, verse 6, I think it is. This is basically the same thing. I think so. Okay, so here that's when I was looking. Okay, so Ezekiel's saying, look, you have our watchmen that sit on the walls at night, and he sees the enemy coming. He sees them, and he doesn't normally watch. The city against the attack or the threat coming, then the blood, according to Ezekiel, is going to be, the punishment is going to be required of that man who did not do that. Paul is doing the same thing here. He's saying, look, I am telling you, this is what God had foretold you in the Old Testament. God had foretold you in all of these passages of the coming Messiah. He told you where the Messiah would be born, from what bloodline he would come. He told you basically when the Messiah would come. All of these things. I think I don't know how many prophecies there are of the coming of Jesus, or the fulfillment of Jesus of these prophecies. And he says, you still refuse to meet these. So therefore, your blood, the responsibility is no longer mine. You have been told, if you are judged by God for rejecting the Messiah that he sent to you and he foretold hold of it, that is on you. Your blood is going to be required. And he's saying, and look what their reaction is. When they opposed Paul and became abusive, they're being abusive of Paul, of pointing out the prophecies in their own writings. So there's a twofold response here. He's saying he's shaking out his clothes. Shaking out his clothes is the same thing of Christ saying, if you go to one city and they reject the gospel message that he is providing, that he is the Christ, what are you to do? You're supposed to kick what off of your sandals? The dust, the very dust of that city off. It's a what do they call that? Like a Jewish idiom is what they call it. A Jewish idiom of kicking off the dust. Here, the same thing is shaking off your clothes in protest to them. And he says the blood. Now, here's another Hebraic idiom. I remember that. Where the opposers bear full responsibility for their ruin, their own judgment. So he's saying, when they opposed Paul, they became abusive. But he's saying, your blood, they bear the responsibility. Your blood is their responsibility to either accept what God has foreordained, what God has foretold you in the prophecies, and if you don't, that's on you. That's on you. We were talking about Mormons earlier. Mormons do the same thing. If you are told the message of Mormonism, message of Mormonism, and you reject it, you're condemned to hell. So, same thing, I guess, here. And that is just a modern example of it. Okay, and this is where Paul pivots to the Gentiles. So Paul is saying, okay, fine, Jews, you will not accept this. Now I'm going to just go strictly to the Gentiles. Verse 8, Crispus, the synagogue leader, and his entire household believed in the Lord, and many of the Corinthians who heard Paul believed and were baptized. So here you have the leader of the synagogue converting to Christianity. Here would be another example of somebody coming in, let's say, I only use this because it is the second largest faith in the world, but let's say somebody of the Islamic faith comes in here, and we all stay on a Sunday afternoon and we're talking, and this guy starts preaching Islam, starts preaching the Quran, starts preaching Muhammad as a prophet. And some people in here agree with him, but most of the people disagree, and we become abusive at this guy for daring to come in here. But our pastor converts to being a Muslim. That would be the equivalent. And this is even greater because of the importance of the city. So the leader of the synagogue becomes a Christian. Okay, so why is this important? This is very significant. Then just set this. Okay, 1 Corinthians 1:14. Can somebody read that for me, please? I didn't do anything, I promise you. Gaius? Okay. So, who's getting baptized here? Crispus, Paul. This is the only person, these are the only two people who have recorded that Paul baptized. There's a lot of people in church traditions, some faith denominations, they believe wholeheartedly in succession, whether it's ordination succession going from Peter. A lot of priests will talk about, well, my ordination succession goes all the way back to Peter, and some people try to use, well, my baptism can be related all the way back to, well, Paul would be a great example to start with, but he says, no, I want to baptize two people. And then these two believers that are the other people that believe who were baptized were likely just Jews and Gentiles. It doesn't really specify. But here this is established as a sequence, which is you hear the word, people believe the word, and then they follow through with baptism. You're just following a command. It isn't you're baptized, and then you hear, and then you believe. It's you hear, believe, and then are baptized. Okay, verse 9. afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. So here, this Greek word "kyrios" is used. It can sometimes refer to Jesus. It doesn't specify. Some people have said, just as Jesus spoke to Paul on the road to Damascus, the familiarity that Paul would be with the personage of Jesus, that this was Jesus speaking to Paul. We don't know for sure. And then at night, it tells us that this could have been a dream or some other form of communication. When we look all throughout the Bible, many of the prophets and people of God were inspired through dreams. Chief among them, if we go to book of Genesis and Joseph was the teller of dreams. And even in the New Testament, we get to another Joseph who an angel came to him in a dream and told him to take Mary. Okay. So here you have the same thing happening. We just do not know for sure. And it says, do not be afraid. And when we say somebody's telling Paul not to be afraid, are you kidding? Paul? Huh? Right, you do not be afraid. Don't be, Lord, or who are you talking to? Me not be afraid? It doesn't matter who the leader is, folks. There's always a certain amount of fear that we have in doing anything for the Lord. When we're out of our safety zone or our element, even every Sunday I come up here and I teach. I have this certain, I'll say fear. I need to say fear. Everybody has a little bit of fear of